Save me, I can't save myself. Save me, this is my cry for help. Save me, I can't save myself. Save me, this is my cry for help. Hello guys. So, we're going to talk about Children's Division today. Yes. Is Children's Division responsible for legally trafficking children? It's a question, okay? And I'm not, necessarily just saying sex trafficking. I mean labor. I mean just trafficking, moving a child from place to place. Are they responsible for that? While working with children who were in foster care, I had noticed some unethical behaviors from professionals as well as officials of the courts. I no longer work in that field now. There's several stories that I could tell you about why that I'm not working in that field no longer, but I can tell you that I'm pretty much blacklisted because I have stood up to them and stood against them and advocated for what was right for my clients. So I no longer work in that field. The CPS actually got me fired, and I am a counselor now at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center. So we're going to talk a little bit about our community problem. And it's not just our community problem, it's everywhere. But I'm going to talk about it as is right here where I live and in my home. With substance use disorder on the rise, so is the need for family services. Children will enter welfare system daily due to parental drug abuse or by other means, but they are thousands going in daily. Many of these children have already been abused and suffer psychological distress by the time that they enter the system. I mean, they already have been through some form of trauma, more than likely. I have heard of cases where they've removed kids for not, it feels to me like ridiculous reasons. And in those cases, I'm not so sure that there was any abuse or neglect. But in the bigger percentage of the cases, there is some type of psychological distress going on with these children. So because of the increased wanted behaviors inside of the system now, once they get them in the system, these children are often found to be problem children. So foster children a lot of times are labeled. So they can be labeled special needs, and then they become subjected to several types of extreme interventions, not excluding institutional and institutions, and putting them on heavy medications that are pretty heavy. The state of Missouri has emancipated children as young as the age of 14, deeming them ready and old enough to take care of themselves, while many teenagers run away from group homes or never located again. So what happens to these dismayed children? Like they run away, a lot of them, from the foster care system, but we don't know what's happening to them. Well, the National Center of Exploited Missing Children report that 18,500 exploited children rescued, that 86% of them were from social services. Okay, so human trafficking is the exploitation of people for sexual servitude and for forced labor. Sexual trafficking of children is a growing problem in the world, and in America is growing. Here in my own area, Jeff City, Columbia, we have it. It is the second largest criminal empire, bringing in billions every year. And it just like any other business, it takes supply and demand, okay? So there has to be supply and demand in the trafficking of humans. And like with, you know, trafficking of a drug, you can traffic a drug like one time, but you can traffic a human over and over and over. So this is what seems to be the similarities between them and children's division, trafficking and children's division, is that they move these children over and over. And they've been, I have interviewed enough people that I am very aware that these children are often due to labor. They have to do a lot of labor. So human trafficking, the exploitation, okay. So unfortunately, there is plenty of both supply and demand when you're talking about CPS. You have a lot of children that are in foster care, and so there's a big supply. People who exploit children for sex like to find vulnerable children, okay? They target those children that don't have the security of a family. That's why transitioning age teenagers that transition out of foster care are at highest risk of being used for sex exploitation. And 86%, did you hear that earlier? 86% of 35,000 that was rescued were from children's division. So we are definitely felling these kids in children's division. The contemporary sex industry involves systematic rape, torture, enslavement, and murder of millions of women and children, whether directly through homicide or indirectly through diseases and drugs. Okay, these children are being trafficked for sex, and you know, the sad thing is that when they're being trafficked, a lot of them, they feel like they've already been used for money, so they seem to be real receptive to this. And this is, you know, like, it's almost, I've talked to a few young ladies who were trafficked, and they felt like they have already been used for money their whole life being in the foster care, and therefore it doesn't seem to bother them. It does bother them, but you know, they are survivors, and they have some real tough exterior. But anyway, there are over 500 children in foster care system in America today. Some of these children end up, 500,000, that's a lot. Some of them end up worse situations than what they have been removed from. And that is often true. And I am, you know, 100% sure that if we was to stand together, put our research together, I think that with Nancy Schaefer's work, with all the current work that's being done, research that's being done, it's no big secret that the system is absolutely positively broken. I mean, there's just no doubt. One of the things that really gets me is that they get incentives even after they adopt. Okay, they get incentives when they adopt these children out, okay, and they get a lot more money when these children are not with kinship. And myself, and then I'm meeting a lot of grandparents and stuff that want their grandchildren and are being expelled from their grandchildren's lives. And I believe it's a money-making scheme. I believe that they are, they do not make as much money when a child is placed with family. They make more when a child is not placed with family. They have incentives when a child is adopted out. So when they finally go to the permanent placement and they get adopted out, then it's $4,000 per child, $2,000 extra if they're special needs. And that's just one incentive. There's other incentives. I think that I could probably sit here and say that and feel like I'm telling, you know, matters of fact when I say that I believe they get close to probably $750,000 per kid, probably throughout their whole life, close to that. And I know that sounds like a whole lot of, but they do get a lot of money. So we're not going to talk a lot about that today, because I kind of just want to address these social community problems that we have that might be able to, you know, make a difference and stuff. Like when children transition out of foster care, they end up in abusive situations, trafficking victims. We, as a society, we have a problem. We have failed these children. Connecticut police, okay, rescued 88 children from sex slavery. 86 of them were from the child welfare. That means only 2 of them was not from the child welfare. So 86 out of 88 children rescued were from child welfare. The FBI in 2014 nationwide raid of many children rescued from sex trafficking included children as young as the age of 11. Were never reported by child welfare authorities. Fox 2018. So they don't report them. And let me tell you, I'm going to stop right here and explain a little bit about what they do when a child runs away from the system. When a child runs away from justice juvenile system, they discharge them until they are found. Once they are found, more than likely they're going to be sent to a group home of some form. But they discharge them, and I don't quite know why yet, but I'm going to find out. But I really feel like that it has to do with pulling their responsibility away, taking their responsibility off of it. So I feel like we need a whole new drive, like a whole new rollover of children's division. We have so many social issues. I mean, service delivery model rationale, okay? Let's see what you think. How is children's division impacting human trafficking industry? That's what I want to know. Like, that is the end goal in this, right at this second. From what we're speaking about, I would like to find that out. I'm going to complete a qualitative research study. I'm going to look into Children's Division, Justice Juvenile Center, human trafficking within my community. I'm going to use a variety of resources and come to responsible conclusions. I'm going to follow a systems theory because they're a system. CPS is a system, and I want to understand the system so that I can see where it's going so wrong. I'm going to use the public health model because it focuses on child welfare system by getting a perspective of those of both sides. I think that there might be a few ethical issues when it comes to this, and it's because, I'm just going to say it, I'm an advocate, and I make a lot of people angry, and getting an interview with CPS or anybody from CPS or Justice Juvenile Center is probably close to nigh to nothing. Probably not going to happen. They are very aware of who I am, and I do advocate, and I'm going to continue to advocate. So I don't feel like that that I'm going to be able to get that kind of insight unless I come across somebody who has worked for them and is willing to take their gag out of their mouth and speak the truth. The systems theory, system represents the element that affect or influence another. So we're going to see how the coalition between human trafficking and children's division. Okay. I do believe that through the behavioral and social learning theory, through public health models, strengths of weaknesses and service delivery model, basically offer services like that meet some of the needs. Now, some of the needs that we see a lot in children's division and our child protective services is that the cycle of generational poverty and trouble with the law, teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, and sex trafficking, of course, we just talked about. Substance use disorder is on the rise here in Missouri. It's leading to welfare crisis, while teenage pregnancy among girls in foster care is around 48%, by the age of 19 and rising. Another sad thing that I'm hearing is that a lot of these children that are raised in foster care, they tell you these horrific stories of when they were in foster care, and where they were like 8, 9 years old and put on medications and labeled as being mental or intellectually disabled. And then when they have their own children, they take them. And yeah, it's awful. So I'm going to look into that more too. You can guarantee that. According to social learning theory, these kids are modeling what they witnessed. The drug abuse and teen pregnancy soaring is a model of what they've witnessed in their life, like continuing the cycle of abuse upon themselves. I'm talking about transitioning age youth right now. With drug use and teen pregnancy soaring, there are many young people who have transitioned out of foster care that now have children of their own that are in the state of Missouri's Protected State Services, CPS. Over 80% of foster children suffer from mental illness, health issues, PTSD, and unwanted behaviors that onset depression, anxiety, and substance use disorder. After aging out of care, many youth end up homeless. They end up couch hopping or, just staying here and there, just being out on the streets. They're all about the thug life right now, And it's real sad to see them out there and not have any type of connection or family. And I wonder how many of them truly have family out there. They're just unable to connect with them because they've lost touch due to CPS intervention. So addiction. Okay, addiction is a horrific effect on families. Studies have shown that families with SUD reveal patterns of significantly influence child development and manipulate the parental perception. To understand people with SUD, you must look at them as a whole. The addiction takes over and the Child Protective Services may be called in at that time. That's when they do a removal. Once they do a removal, then they are assigned a team. The mom is assigned a team to oversee, it's the plan, that they put a plan in order. And this plan is supposed to be something that mom and dad do to get the kids back. Well, the plan let's see, the people on the team consist of a justice juvenile officer. It consists of a guardian ad litem, which is usually an attorney, and that is the child's attorney. And then there is mom's attorney, dad's attorney, a caseworker, usually a supervisor to a caseworker. And then there is the CASA worker, which is another child advocacy program. The foster parents sometimes are in there, and the real parents. And then sometimes they have this, if they are seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist or something, they will have them in there. So approximately 20,000 children age out of foster care each year. 20,000 children are just thrown out there. I mean, there are programs, a few programs built to help youth in our bigger cities, but studies have shown that less than half of these kids want anything to do with these services. I mean, they don't trust the system. Most of the children are adults that I've spoke to that grew up in as a foster child, have been through some horrific things, and they're just barely making it through their PTSD, and it's just a very vicious cycle. I know that in our identifying another community problem was that substance use treatments, they cost thousands of dollars, and not everybody can afford that. And if you don't have insurance, you're more likely going to go on a waiting list for a state-paid bed, and you're going to be on that list for a good period of time. So I would propose that they speed up, at least the opportunity for these parents to go into drug rehabilitation immediately from the time that they remove their children. They should have the option to go into drug rehab within 48 hours without having to worry about how they are going to, you know, how are they going to address it. So anyways, community problem 2. There's a platform or a pattern of repeated mistakes happening at CPS, and it needs to be redressed. When it becomes easier for a state to emancipate a child at 14 years old than to offer her a good life, that is a problem. It is a system, thus is ran just like one. The families are paying the price for its brokenness. There is saying used to Narcotics Anonymous definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's heartbreaking cycle, and that it continues to repeat itself generation after generation. So the Central Missouri of Foster Care and Adoption Association report that 60% of sexually exploited children are out of foster care. All of these high percentages of these babies in and out of foster care. I mean, we have to figure out some form of pre-pilot release program, some policy changes, something, you know, like if I was to, a policy statement would apply to treatment centers, government funding in any way, making them accountable. Like, they need to be able to go into treatment. We need to try to rebuild these families, you know, instead of just giving the kids to somebody else. We really, truly need to try to work on the families. If we could turn our energy into building the family unit instead of whipping it apart and breaking it apart, then we could do amazing things. I have said this before, and I'm going to say this. Caseworkers and, you know, they have the ability to be a hero. Like, they have the opportunity to be something great. They do. They have the opportunity to be a hero in these people's lives. So why are they a nightmare? It's a question you should think about. Until next time, guys. Laura Thomason, Truth.